April is almost upon us, which means it is almost time for yet another spring equinox for the Magical Readathon. I became aware of the Magical Readathon just before the autumn equinox last year, and I was able to participate in that for the first time. So this is going to be the first full year that I am going to have to participate in this readathon, which is exciting. If you're not familiar with the Magical Readathon, it is a readathon hosted by G over at Book Roast. Over there's a lot of information on how it's run. There's even recommendations, and people are now starting to release their TBRs, which is what I want to do today. I did create a character last year, but I don't remember the name. I do remember generally what they look like, and I know that the calling I was going for was Rift Architect. Pretty much since that introductory video was released for this coming semester, I have been going back and forth on if I want to change my calling. I considered starting down the necromancy path, but that one requires a ton of books, and I had a hard enough time last semester getting things done. And so I'm just going to continue on the path that I previously chose. I still think it's pretty cool, and that is the Rift Architect. The first area of study for the Rift Architect is astronomy, which requires us to randomly generate a color for a cover pick. There are a lot of helpful color wheel randomizers out there, but I didn't find one with a quick search that I really liked, or that I could edit quickly and then actually have the colors match each particular color that I was adding to it. So instead, I'm just going to use one of my spreadsheets that and randomly generate a number between 1 and 12, which this includes pink and teal and black and gray, which I wasn't seeing in some of those other tools. So we're going to generate a color from this. So let us prime it 3 times. That's what I like to do. Okay, and then this is going to be the one. Number 9, brown and beige. Interesting. Not the most interesting of colors, but I'm sure that there are some good choices in here. So I did a little bit of pre-planning some of the colors. Like, I found at least 8 different books for each color, and which was definitely overboard, because that's why it's like I need to get this video made so that I can stop obsessing about the little background things that I can do to prepare. I do have some already picked out that I mostly took from my existing TBR. Because I'm more of a moody reader, I wanted to gather a handful of options so that when it comes down to it, I'm probably going to choose my most anticipated book, like the one that I think I'm going to most likely read during this spring semester. But if I'm not feeling it, then I want to have options just ready to go. One of those options that has actually been on my TBR for a really long time, probably maybe not a decade, maybe a decade, a while, is Lumberjanes. This is the first volume, and it's called Beware the Kitten Holy. I know that it kind of looks reddish or orange. That's why I didn't actually add it to my list of possibilities. It was just when I was looking through my shelves and being like, oh, that actually is pretty brown. Maybe mahogany, but I'd still call that brown. I know that the Lumberjanes is about friendship and adventure, and those both sound really great to me. Another one I have checked out right now, I picked out because I have done like monthly themes before, and one of the themes, can't remember if it was March or April, so kind of interesting. It was exactly a year ago. It was Chance of Mushroom Rain. So I was choosing things that were either fungi based or rain. And so one of the books that came onto my radar at that time is called Fungi, and it is a short story collection. It's edited by Oren Gray and Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I don't know any of the authors that contributed to this except for Jeff Vandermeer. I'm realizing that talking about books that have themes or mention of mushrooms and spores that are wreaking havoc, it's it's a spoiler in and of itself. So I can't even say which books I have read and loved without giving away that there were mushrooms involved. But you're just going to have to believe me that I have really enjoyed quite a few fungal books in the past, and horror specifically. I just think that that's such a cool concept. And so fungi, I think, is going to be a really good choice if I were to go that route. When I first started getting into the bookish side of YouTube, I quickly found myself in more of the horror genre booktubers, which is a blessing in disguise. I've discovered so many different books over there that I just didn't even know existed until I started watching booktube regularly. One of the books that stood out to me the most is called Cruel Nature by D.B. Albiza, and this includes 7 terrifying tales to trouble your sleep. This is a middle grade short story collection, and what I really love about this particular book is that the author wrote these stories for her children and then ended up getting them published eventually. And I think that's really cool. And inside there are definitely some pretty, well, let's skip that one. Okay, that one's, if this is the less creepy thing in here, there's some really good art throughout. It's not incredibly illustrated, but maybe like each short story has at least one piece of art that goes into it. But it's really cool. I'm just really like how this book looks and feels. The print is pretty big. Like I said, it's middle grade. And it's also a very small book. So this would be a really good and fast read for sure for this particular prompt. I'm also participating in Old School April at the same time as the Magical Readathon. Old School April is not necessarily a horror-centric readathon, but just the vibes of the cover alone give me retro vibes. I guess this kind of story just makes me feel like it reminds me of Goosebumps. And so because of that, I feel like it's going to fit in really well with Old School April as well. We'll see if we end up going with this one or not. Okay, and then a few others that I don't have physically with me that I'm also interested in. We have The Bloodless Princess by Charlotte Bond. It is the second entry in the Fireborn Blade series. The first of which, The Fireborn Blade, I read last year. I ended up giving it a 3.5. The first line of my review of that one says, "I'm glad I read The Fireborn Blade, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. It had dragons in it and lady knights, and I was set up to love it, and I just ended up not really. I still want to continue with the series and hopefully give it a second chance." So The Bloodless Princess is definitely on my to be read list still. Another one that's on my radar is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Stories from the Crematory, and that one's by Caitlin Doty. This one has really high reviews and the page count is relatively low, and I've heard great things about this book. I would assume that there's some exploration of people's relationship with life and death, and I know that there's some humor woven into it, and it just sounds like a really cool book. Another option that I'm interested in reading is called 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City by KJ Parker. I think I found out about this book from a Reddit post that was talking about, it was something along the lines of horrible characters that you can't help rooting for, or really good bad characters, something like that. So it has me really intrigued. I did read the first chapter and the humor, I loved it. So this one's one that I definitely, it's been on my short list for a very long time. We're going down the path of the ones that I would really like to get to. The book that I am more than likely going to be reading for this particular prompt, this book, which was released recently, and I have mentioned it before in a recent video, is The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I mean, there's a brown buffalo and a beige background, and sure, there's red text, but this is a brown cover. I'm very highly anticipating reading this. I didn't get to it in March as planned, so I think that this is going to be at the top of my list for what I want to read for this prompt. Next up, we have Inscription, which is a first sentence challenge. We're supposed to pick 3 books, read the first sentence from each, and then choose from there. Because this is such a broad prompt, what I want want to do is I want to actually utilize my ultra meta moody book project tool and generate a subset of books to choose the 3 from and then go from there. I have actually changed what is included in this list of subsets here. I've added a few, and I have also gone through and reassigned numbers for how I felt, how important everything was. Before, my library checkouts used to be a 5. Now it's a 2, just as an example. We're not going to go through every single one, but I just wanted to say, so now we're looking at, before I can't remember, it was like 1 through 49 or something, and now we're looking at 1 through 65. If you are unfamiliar with what this tool is, I'll link in the description a more in-depth explanation of how this is used, but just a quick little summary is that it's a tool that will help me narrow down my choices of books to choose from that I'm interested in reading. We're going to generate a number here and see what we should focus on for this first sentence challenge. Okay, I'm going to prime it 3 times. Here, I'm going to reload it first, actually. We're going to change that to 65. I'm going to prime it 3 times. And the next one is going to be the one that we're going off of. 53, which is for a readathon or reading challenge. That's exciting, actually. So for this particular prompt, the intention was that at any given moment, I am working on a readathon or a bingo board. I created my own bingo board back in December. It started December. It goes through October 31st of this year. I'm not prioritizing my own book bingo, but the one that I am prioritizing is actually the R Fantasy bingo challenge over on Reddit. But I have actually, hopefully as of tonight, I will have finished my board, which with 5 days to spare, I will have finished the one for this year. It ends at the end of March. It right now is March 25th. So instead of delaying this video from coming out, we're gonna just pause it on this particular book prompt. And I'm going to include it in one of the other Magical Readathon videos that I'm going to put out in the future. So it'll probably be the first thing that I do in anything that's related to this readathon, to be able to specify what that first sentence challenge result is that also satisfies one of the bingo squares on the brand new Reddit bingo board. So for now, we're just going to continue along and see what the other 4 books are for the rest of the coursework for this semester. Next up, we have Spells and Incantations that requires us to choose a title that shares a word with a book that we're currently reading. So when I started preparing for this, I was in the middle of reading Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell and City Spies by James Pontes. I gathered titles based off of the fact that I was reading both of those books. And then I could, say that, oh, I was reading this book and that's why I can do it, So one of the books that I'm interested in reading is The City in Glass by Nevo. Nevo, I knew I was going to love Nevo's work, and I finally got a genuine taste for it when I checked out The Empress of Salt and Fortune, which I really enjoyed that. It's one of my favorite reads so far this year. I have read the first chapter of The City in Glass, and I ended up giving that one an intrigue rating of 10 out of 10. So it's definitely on my radar and one that I would like to get to. I don't even remember exactly what it's about. Fantasy? I know it has fantasy. And I remember them being in a deep, dank temple. But then again, maybe I'm mixing it with something else that I read around the same time. Another option that's on my radar is I actually have the second installment of the Spy Family manga series. I read the first one and I thought it was awesome. It was so fun and cute and so funny. There were so many funny moments in the first installment. And I would love to continue this story. I really liked it. I think it would be really fun. And here it is. I already own it. I should just get to actually reading it. This one, of course, has spy in the title. Spy, spies. It's close enough. Another option would be to finally check out Jade City by Fonda Lee. I have heard such mixed things about this book. Firstly, it's pretty enormous. I mean, 560 pages is not the largest book that I've ever read, but it's larger than the average book that I read. It seems that the people that love this book really love it, and then the people that don't like it that much don't get it at all. As far as I can tell, a lot of those opposing views has something to do with if you like crime family novels or not. And I don't know if I can think of a crime family novel that I have read. I have played a video game in that same vein. It was the first installment of Mafia, and I actually enjoyed it a lot. So there's a chance that I will like this one as well. Another option for this prompt is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Ernest Cunningham. This one would be more of a fun, it seems like a locked room mystery. Mysteries are kind of a hit and miss genre for me. So it would be like slightly out of my comfort zone, but it's something that I have also heard really great things about and have been curious to check out myself. And then lastly, and what I'm going to say is the book that I'm most planning on reading for this prompt is what I actually mentioned earlier in this video, 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City by KJ Parker. This one, of course, shares city in the title with City Spies that I'm currently reading. I have read the first chapter of 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City, and I ended up giving this one a 10 out of 10 intrigue rating. And it's like the second most intriguing book that's on my list. And it's just above The Black Tongue Thief, which is one of my most anticipated books. So I guess this one is even more anticipated. And without knowing what future me has decided for the previous course's book, I feel like at this point in time, only knowing that The Buffalo Hunter is on my TBR, I feel like it is going to be a total tone shift or something that I can read alongside it. At this point, I'm only planning on reading The Buffalo Hunter, which is a historical horror, and 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City is more of a historical fantasy, and maybe those historical elements will clash, but they're in such different parts of the world that I think that these two would work out to read side by side or back to back. So we're going to go with that one for spells and incantations. Next up is psionics and divination. This year we're studying psychokinesis, and that means that we are to pick a book that contains witches or the occult. When I hear the word occult, I automatically go to like gothic horror is what I think of. Magical gothic horror is what I think of with occult. But when you look it up, it says of involving or relating to supernatural, mystical, or magical powers or phenomena. That is essentially any fantasy book with magic. This is another one that I want to use my ultra meta moody book project tool to help us decide and see what to focus on. Okay, let us prime this 3 times. And after this one, 59, which is to read from a repeat author. So that is from an author that I have already read from, obviously. When it comes to books that feature witches or the occult, magic, I have many options to choose from, most of them being from T. Kingfisher. So instead of making this a list of all the T. Kingfisher books on my TBR, I'm going to instead only include one of those. But first up, I'm going to mention an option would be to continue the Old Kingdom series and read Lyriel by Garth Nix. This is right now I'm this close to finishing Sabriel, and I've really enjoyed it, and I would love to continue this series. This seems to follow a completely different character in the same world, which sounds really cool. I would love to experience this. Like, I feel like in Sabriel we don't get like there's a lot that's thrown at the reader at once, so this would be like I would hope to get from this maybe a more in-depth look at this world from somebody that has been a part of this world for a while, is what it sounds like. The only drawback for this one for me is that I don't tend to jump straight into like continuing a series, which maybe I should learn from that because I am in the middle of many series. I should make a video about that maybe. Another option would be Martha Wells. I have read the first Murderbot entry. So Martha Wells is an author I've read from. I read All Systems Red last year, and it was my #1 book of the year, which was shocking because of how much I loved Fever House that year by Keith Rawson. I just love the story of Murderbot. I would love to continue in that series, even though I have a lot further to go with it, considering I've only read the one installment so far. But this is Martha Wells' foray into fantasy. Maybe, well, she has done more before in the past. I do have the Book of Ilrene, but it's a lot longer. And also, yeah, I mean, it's magical probably, but this is such a pretty edition. I don't really know anything about it. It has witch in the title. It's fantasy. It has these nice sprayed edges. This is the Illumicrate edition. It has like really beautiful end pages and really nice foiled cover. It's just really cool. I got the box that this one came in, so it came with the bookmark that goes with it too. This is the Witch King bookmark that came in that Illumicrate book box, which I just bought it one off. I didn't buy it I didn't get it randomly. I knew what the book was and everything, but I think the metal bookmark really sold me. This is just the paper backing that it's sitting in. It is very delicate, so I try not to take it out unless I'm really using it. Whenever I get to Witch King, I will definitely be using this bookmark. But yeah, this would be another option for an author I've read from that has magic and the word witch in it. Then this next one is maybe a little more mythological. It would be kind of towing the line, and then I would have to read it and then see if it even really covered the prompt or not. But then I would probably just count it if I ended up going that entire route. That is When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Nevo. I have read the first installment of this I mentioned earlier, and I loved it. Definitely had some magical elements to it. I wouldn't call it a cult, like with my definition, but according to Google, this one would count. So this would be another option. I would love to continue the Singing Hill cycle immediately. And this doesn't even have to be the next one. It could really be any of the installments that are out. I know there's even a 6th one that's coming out. This is the only other one that I physically own right now. I do have the ebooks for a few of the other novellas in this series, and these are meant to be read in any order. But I just love this cover. It was on my list of options for orange covers, and so it's a shame we didn't get orange, but this would be a good way to still be able to read this particular book. Next, I've mentioned this one before, and that is My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Van Veen. This is Joanna Van Veen's debut novel, so it might confuse you slightly why this one would be on my list of options, because I've actually read Joanna Van Veen's sophomore novel, which actually was released today of all days. That's really funny, actually. This one definitely embodies my idea of what occult means. There's seances and ghosts and creepy things going on. So yeah, occult very much here. I've read the first chapter of this one, and it's #2 out of every first chapter rating that I've made. It's my #2. It was in the #1 spot forever until I read The Devil by Name by Keith Rawson, and I really love that first chapter. So Joanna Van Veen's second novel, Blood on Her Tongue, it was very well written. It was very historical. It was kind of slow, and I didn't dislike that. This would be the only author in this list where I would be going into the second read, seeing if I really was going to get along with the writing and style, while all the other authors that I've mentioned so far would be more just solidifying or seeing more what they had to do. Like, I guess I'm less certain about Joanna Van Veen than the rest, but that makes me more curious about seeing how My Darling Dreadful Thing turns out for me. And lastly, I don't have this one. Well, I do have this one physically. I just haven't found it yet in my boxes. And that is What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher, which is the second entry in the Sworn Soldier series of novellas. I read What Moves the Dead last year and I absolutely loved it. 5 out of 5. It was my first 5-star of the year. It was great. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I have been wanting to continue the series since I read it, and for whatever reason, I have not continued. It has been on my extremely short list for most of the year, and there it remains. But this would be an excellent time for me to actually read it. But then again, this mentions a breath-stealing monster in the synopsis, which makes me think there's something magical. There was definitely something eerie and creepy and occult, I would say, going on in the first novella. So I would think that this one would probably follow that same pattern, but then again, I might be wrong. So this would be one. It's a novella. It's 151 pages. This would definitely be okay to take a gamble on and just hope that there was witches and occult. And if not, I would be finally continuing on in a series that I really, really love. I know that I love this series and I've only read one book. So that would be my most likely pick for psionics and divination. And the last course that we need to conquer is conjuration, with a course focus of locational summons. That one requires us to randomly generate a country 5 times, and then from there find a book where the author is from that country. This has been one of the most exciting and also most intimidating prompts for me. I really want to diversify my tastes. I just the unknowns and like it feels like the most research that I'm going to have to do, which I just need to get over it. I am going to simply look at Wikipedia for the list of countries. There's 195 countries, which I was all excited because I thought, I learned how many there were, and I was like, there's definitely exactly 150. And for some reason, I had that in my head and I was all excited because I was like, okay, now I know a trivia fact, and we would have failed. Okay, we're looking at Wikipedia there's 195 countries. I am going to just randomly generate 5 countries. It looks like this list is sorted by total land and water area mass for each country. So anyway, if you care about that, that is what the ordering is based off of. There's 195 countries, so let us prime this. 1, 2, 3. All right, the next one. 159. That would be Gambia. Whoa. We got a 1. Russia. We have, a pretty small country. Bahrain. 51. Turkmenistan. And lastly, I can't believe we got 1. That's so wild. Belgium. Interesting. I don't know if I have any Belgian authors on my list. Okay, so I have to do some research into some of these authors and make a little 5-book TBR based off of that. I'm back. What made this a little more difficult was that I decided that because so far I have no sci-fi on my list, I decided I wanted to read a sci-fi. I have only come up with a list of 3 books, 2 of which I am familiar with the video games that they inspired. The third being a short story collection that includes only 1 story by an author in one of the countries that we rolled. So that short story collection is called Afro SF Science Fiction by African Writers. It was published in 2012 and it is 405 pages. But like I said, there is only 1 Gambian author in the list of authors. So I would think that that shouldn't really count for this particular prompt. Which leaves me with just 2 options, which would be Metro 2033, written by Dmitry Glukovsky. And that is a game of that particular title that I have played in the last year. That was the second time I'd played it.
Okay. Looks it's gonna be tougher than the library.
I mean, that was already pretty tough for me, so... I've already started. Oh shit. I don't have any more ammo, man. What do? I just sit here and hope. Oh! Oh! You have to save me. Oh! Oh God. How do you do this with such few bullets?
Did it!
Demons? What is this game? I really have been curious about this until that second playthrough. I didn't even know that the games were based off of novels. So it would be really cool to dig into the source material for those games. That would be an interesting endeavor. I do know that those books are quite beefy, and I don't know if I'm prepared for such an endeavor. Next, in a similar vein, there's Roadside Picnic by Arkady Strugatsky. That is the source material that inspired the Stalker games. I would say that Stalker and Metro are just like incredibly similar, at least in tone. Stalker is a game series that I have not explored, but has been in my to be played list instead of to be read. Get it? It's been on my to be played list for many, many years now. One of my favorite things in media is this concept of anomalies, and therefore Stalker has always been incredibly intriguing to me. Anomalies, creatures that have mutated. I just know that that is a series that I would definitely love. So perhaps checking out Roadside Picnic would be something that I should try. And being that it's only 145 pages, I feel like that might be the one that I go with. I did look into books from all of the countries that we rolled, but I did not find any additional science fiction, and a lot of what I was finding was nonfiction, which is not something that I'm against, but also not something that in this exact moment I'm looking for. Sci-fi is what I'm focusing on, and Roadside Picnic is, I think, the choice for this particular prompt. So that is everything I know I'm going to be reading right now in this moment for the 2025 Magical Readathon Spring Equinox. Thank you for joining me while we explored my pile of possibilities, and let me know in the comments if you too are participating in this readathon. And if you also happen to be taking Conjuration this semester, let me know what your 5 countries were, and if you also struggled with that one as much as I did. I'm hoping to make a video or two about my time during this semester. So until then, bye-bye.